Every time my brother got angry, he broke my stuff. Then he'd tell our parents I'd done it myself during some meltdown, and they believed him. To them, it made sense. You've always been so strange, too emotional. I remember the first time I hid my favorite doll in the closet. And then I started hiding my feelings too. I grew up in a house where everything felt upside down. Cruelty was normal. Pain was an overreaction. My older brother was the golden child, smart, athletic, charming, the family's pride and joy. He could do anything and always come out clean. And me? I was background noise, a convenient target, the family scapegoat, automatically guilty. It started with toys. He'd rip the heads off my dolls, snap the legs off my toy horses, tear up my books. I cried. He laughed. Then he'd walk up to Mom and say, "She did it. She had a tantrum." And she'd look at me with disappointment. Again? What kind of girl are you? It was textbook emotional neglect from parents, but I didn't know that yet. I was 6. In our house, you weren't allowed to be angry. Well, he was. I wasn't. If I ever said I felt hurt or scared, I'd get called dramatic or too sensitive. But I wasn't scared of him breaking my things. I was scared because my feelings didn't matter. It was like I existed in some translucent state, not fully real. I could scream, and no one heard me. That's what gaslighting in families feels like. When reality gets twisted right in front of you and you start wondering, maybe I did break it. Maybe I really am the problem. When I was 8, he slammed the closet door on my hand and broke my finger. He knew my hand was there. Then he said, "She put it there herself." I didn't see. My parents took me to the hospital, then stayed silent the entire drive home. At home, my mom said, "You have to be more careful. You always ruin everything." It was emotional abuse, but I just thought there was something wrong with me. That's when I started hiding my stuff. Drawings went under the lining of my backpack. A stuffed animal from my grandma, hidden in a shoebox behind the closet. Sometimes he found them anyway, and destroyed them with this weird kind of delight. That's when I learned to hide my feelings too. I didn't cry. I didn't complain. I disappeared. I was quiet at school. Teachers would say I was very reserved. I didn't know how to get angry. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't believe I deserved protection. That's what happens when a family plays favorites. My whole sense of self was built on the belief that I was the problem. When I was 12, he called me ugly. Just like that. I was standing in front of the mirror, braiding my hair. He walked in, smirked, and said, "No one's ever going to love you. Look at yourself." I remember my throat tightening so badly I couldn't even swallow. That day, I stopped braiding my hair. I started hating mirrors and myself. He was a teenager, hormones, anger issues. And my parents excused it all. "Boys have it harder," my mom would say. He'd punch walls, throw things, scream at everyone, then go right back to playing PlayStation. I'd curl up in my room, trembling. And I knew that if I told anyone, they'd just say, "Don't start again." It was the classic story. The daughter versus the golden child. By the time I turned 14, I was depressed. Really depressed. No tears, no screaming. Just this crushing heaviness. I felt nothing. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to eat. I told my mom it felt like there was this giant hole inside me. She laughed and said, "You've been reading too much." My dad said, "One more word about depression and I'm cutting off the Wi-Fi." They didn't believe I was depressed. They didn't believe in me at all. My parents never supported me. I withdrew into myself. Hid in books, started journaling. It was the only place I could be real. Only paper seemed to believe that I wasn't the problem. Sometimes my mom would find my notebook, read it, and call it pathetic. Once she even walked in and said, "All you ever do is feel sorry for yourself." And that's when I realized I wasn't allowed to be myself at home. When I was 16, I fell in love. He was in a different class. Kind, gentle, attentive. He told me I was beautiful. I didn't believe him. I thought he was joking. It took me a year to finally accept that he meant it. But then my brother found out. He knew the guy and started blackmailing me. "I'll show everyone the notes you wrote in your diary. I'll show them that picture where you're crying." I begged him to stop. He didn't. So I broke up with the guy. Told him it was over. He didn't understand why, but I did. That's when I realized my brother wasn't just a bully. He was someone who destroyed me from the inside. No physical violence, just pure, calculated cruelty. I graduated with honors, not because I loved studying, but because it was my only ticket out. I got into a university in another state. My parents weren't even that excited. My mom said, "Hope you don't mess it up like you usually do." I left, and for the first time in my life, I exhaled. Living alone felt strange. Freedom was terrifying. I stood in a grocery store staring at the shelves, not knowing which pasta to buy. I'd always just picked the one we had at home. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I wanted. I'd spent so many years without the right to choose that I forgot what choice even felt like. I started seeing a therapist, and for the first time in my life, someone said, "You didn't imagine it. That was abuse." Those words changed everything. The memories didn't come back in fragments anymore. They came back like a full picture. I remembered how he set my notebook on fire, then blamed me for being careless. I remembered how he told Dad I was watching adult videos, and I got punished for it. How my parents blamed me for their fights because you're always making things up. I started to understand how deeply they damaged my sense of worth, how they shamed me in front of others, how they called me the disgrace of the family. I stopped calling them. For years. Sometimes they'd call me, just to remind me I was ungrateful. "You'll see one day. Everything we did for you." But I already saw it, just not the way they wanted. Over time, I grew stronger. Therapy, work, real friends. I built a home where no one breaks me, where I don't have to hide my feelings, where I can cry and still be loved, where I can say I'm angry without being punished, where I'm not the problem. I'm a person. Then one day, my mom called. She said, "Your brother's depressed. Help him. You're so smart now." I listened silently. It was amazing, really. How suddenly they'd found the perfect words to describe male weakness. How delicately they spoke about his suffering, as if it wasn't a meltdown. It was a grand tragedy. He was struggling. He was burned out. He had anxiety. They spoke of it all with such reverence, like it was some kind of royal illness. But my pain? That was just drama. My depression? A phase. My feelings? An inconvenience. I said, "All right, I'll come." But I didn't come to comfort him. I came to show them who I'd become. We pulled up to my parents' house in a big dark car. My car. My husband got out first. Tall, strong, confident. He lifted our youngest son into his arms while our two older kids ran toward the front steps, laughing. Their eyes were full of joy. They knew what it felt like to be loved at home. I walked inside, and the first face I saw was my brother's. He sat there with his shoulders slumped, faded, pale. And I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. He looked like a stranger. He was a stranger. They thought I'd come to support him. My mom was already prepared with her speech. My dad stood off to the side like always. I cut them off. "I'm here to pick up my things, the ones you couldn't take from me." I walked into my old room. Everything was dusty, but I remembered where things were. I opened an old box and pulled out a horse with a broken leg. That one. Then a doll with her arm torn off. My broken toys. My evidence. My childhood. I gathered them into a box, held them close. "These things mean more to me than your golden boy," I said softly. "He broke them, and you said it was me. So now you all get to look at what he destroyed." I left first. My kids bounced down the stairs. My husband held the door open for me. I got in the car, and we drove away. They stood on the porch in complete silence. They saw who I'd become. Today, I'm the CEO of a tech company, a woman people listen to, a woman people respect, the one they applaud at conferences, a wife to a kind, brilliant, and beautiful man, a mom to 3 happy kids, a woman who survived and then built a life where no one gets to break her. Since then, they haven't sent me any more guilt trips, only long messages about how they've always loved me, how they miss me, how proud they are. I don't reply. I'm not angry. I'm just giving them time. Let them sit with what it feels like, to call out and hear nothing back. I'll come to them. Someday, but not now.